What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Market Fueled by once again joining me from the show, Jalen Hunter of the Unpopular podcast and Tony Spencer of Final Local Sports. What's up, Jalen? How you doing?
For some reason, bro, you had me on to talk about two teams, the Bears, and unfortunately my team. So I don't know if this is a friendly conversation we're about to have. Just like, why can't I talk about the Chiefs or something? Like, it's crazy.
We'll get there. We'll get there. There's a lot of light at the end of the tunnel. We're trucking along. You know, I think, as I said before the show, I think I've done a good thing, giving you a partner to kind of talk about the misery that is the Washington football team, or the Washington Commanders, or
You
whatever.
just want someone to bounce back our depression off of towards one another. That's all. That's all you want.
Company, it's good for you to kind of have someone down in the foxhole with you, isn't it? Like it's better to go through the struggles of life with a partner than you go through it alone.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
I feel like I'm doing a good thing. Whatever. We'll see how it goes over the course of the show. Before we get into the actual stuff that we want to talk about, the first thing I do want to talk about is Dan Snyder potentially being forced to sell the team. I think a week and a half ago, maybe there was reports that other 31 owners in the NFL were meeting about whether or not he should sell the team. Should Dan Snyder sell the team? And if he does sell the team, do you think they'll rename the team again?
I'm sorry you heard that. Teflon.
That was his analysis of the team getting sold right
There
there.
you go. I apologize
Zooming
for that.
away.
Teflon Dan, man. I don't think they're gonna. I don't know. So this man has had a cheerleading sex ring. Apparently, he's had deplorable workplace environment. We had a sewer break on us mid game, like a sewer pipe mid game, which actually got on fans, and he survived all of that. And it's ironic that the one thing that possibly may make him sell the team is the fact that he was skimping money from the other owners. Um, I I think he should have been sold the team. I understand it's kind of, you can't tell someone what to do when they're the owner, but it's kind of hard when you see a lot of the situations that's come out of Washington, not just recently, but since he's been owner. And I understand you can't make someone sell due to malpractice as far as making poor decisions, but he is the Jerry Jones of Washington, just completely horrible decisions. Jerry Jones makes bad decisions. Dan Snyder makes horrible decisions with the team. Starts with Albert Hainsworth. I'm not gonna talk about it, but I don't think they're gonna rename the team. I mean, we just went through three names in a span of 3 years, 4 years. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I don't think they're gonna make him sell because of everything that he has survived, which in my opinion, he should have been had to sell the team. I think he may have dirt on every owner, who knows, or maybe dirt on Roger Goodell. I don't know, but there's I for as a Washington fan, as someone that lives or lived literally 10 minutes from the stadium, I couldn't understand for the life of me how he continued to rise up like the Undertaker every time an allegation hit him. And it's not even an allegation. A lot of it has been proven true. I mean, hell, I didn't even talk about the John Gruden emails. So I don't know how he continues to survive, but and because he's been able to survive this long, unfortunately, I think this is just another tally on the list of things that he's gotten out of. So I don't think he will have to sell the team, even though I think he should.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to sell the team either. And as was mentioned, like the man's been playing with fire for like the last 10, 15 years and he hasn't gotten in trouble yet. So he's just going to continue to play with fire until something actually comes down on him. And not in just like the NFL, but all sports. The owners really try to hold out as long as possible until it's almost they are forced out by the commissioner or the owners. And if until they actually decide to crack down on him, he's not going to. And then on the name, it won't be changed. They just started a full rebrand again. So what are you going to do now? Now you have to factor in if we're even going to win. If we're not winning, they might think of if to change the name, because then the whole culture of the Commanders now is completely irrelevant because you're not showing a franchise of of winning, right? So the name won't change. Snyder will stay in. It's just the way the franchise has been going the last 10 to 15 years, and you got to look at it that way.
If you want to look at the epitome of this franchise, I don't know if you got this email, Blaine, but they sent like a whole bunch of email. They sent an email to a whole bunch of fans, like a tally, a poll of what their favorite name would be.
I did get that.
And Red Wolves was like number one. Once you clicked, it was like 45% of the people clicked Red Wolves, and the last percentage was the Commanders. Last time I checked, right now they're the Washington Commanders. I don't know what's going on here, but that just shows you,
Yeah.
if you can, it's like smoke and mirrors. You make it seem like I care about something, but I really don't. I don't. Dan Snyder doesn't care two S's about what the fans have to say. He's always going to be the richest person in the room, unless he's in the same room with Jerry Jones, and that's just how it's going to be. And it's malpractice. It's malpractice, and it's malpractice that has not, like Blaine says, been going on for 10, 15 years now. So I don't see much changing, honestly.
Yeah, and then to piggyback on what you were saying with the Red Wolves thing, I mean, I was one that did not vote for the Red Wolves name because my brothers just love to tease me and just do the howl 24/7. But the my source that I have within the organization, I'm not going to name drop him, but he told me that it was a lot to do with patents and trademarking was the real issue with all of the names, that they couldn't even be able to buy out any of those names even if they wanted to. So like Commanders was one of the few names that was even an option, even though they did that email that just completed to be a voided use of statistics anyway.
Yeah.
One other thing I can add is that they've bought a new patch of land in Virginia to make a stadium, and it's being reported that that stadium will likely hold 55,000 people, which would make it the smallest stadium in the league. It's the Washington Commanders for you. I don't really know. Sell the team, don't sell the team. They'll still suck. It doesn't really matter. Someone else that sucks is Carson Wentz, or as he was branded throughout the course of this offseason, Commander Carson, is coming to Washington. Washington traded for Carson Wentz with the Indianapolis Colts. Last time we saw Carson Wentz play good football was the year the Eagles won the Super Bowl. Blaine, do you think Carson Wentz can tap back into some of that and maybe get this new era of Washington football off to a right start this season?
All right, so Marcus asked me this question first because he knows how much of a rant I went on my show about Carson Wentz when the move took place. I think there is the possibility he gets there. It's going to take a lot of ifs and work, right? And people say, look at his stats from last year, and this has been the one thing that I always look at. He has, statistically speaking, he had a very solid season, one of his best by a long shot since that near MVP season before he got hurt. But if you actually, like, I went back and watched like almost every game of his tape. His interceptions should have been in the 20 range if a cornerback or a safety learned how to catch the ball. Like, seriously. And like the issue with that is, on top of that, when you needed him most on a team that had arguably the best player in football and Jonathan Taylor on the offensive end, that Carson folded 2 weeks in a row. All you had to do was win one. And one of them was against the team that had the number one overall pick. So that's already in and of itself. And I know I'm already sounding way too depressed about the whole Carson Wentz situation because I was one that wanted Matt Ryan so bad. But He's got to put in a lot of work. He's got to play smart football. That's all we have to ask from him. We've got Terry McLaurin. Dotson's a decent option. He's had the best hands in this draft, in my argument. And you have a decent running back in Gibson. Just take the ball out of his hands, force him to make the easy read and just throw the ball. Like, that's it. So it's going to take a lot of work. I think he can get there, but not anytime soon, in my opinion.
So pretty much there's no hope. And
yeah,
I say there's no hope because of everything that you said is absolutely true, except for the fact that we're asking an undependable person to be dependable. He's coming from a situation where, if you just look at the totality of the Colts compared to the Commanders now, the Colts have a better offensive line. You can debate they're better coached. They have a arguably better defense. Outside of, I guess, a solid number 2 receiver, everything that you can ask for to be successful, the Colts gave Carson Wentz. And what did that get him? They got him on the Washington Commanders. Like Blaine said, you needed 2 wins to make it to the playoffs, make it to the same place Phillip Rivers did a year before you. And you couldn't do it against the Jacksonville Jaguars. In fact, it's funny. I went back and looked because his numbers were decent, like Blaine said. His numbers were really good last year. And I'm like, all right, well, what happened? Yo, some of the interceptions that he threw borderline make you think, not even just how is this man in the NFL, how is this man playing football? Some of those interceptions he made, I would make in an NFL and on an NFL field. And I haven't played football since 2003. It's just confusing. And you're asking somebody that has less talent on the offensive line now, while he does have better options, in my opinion, in the wide receiver, tight end position. You're asking somebody that has less to do more. And I said this when I came on here a while ago. I'm not mad at we got Carson Wentz because, I mean, who else were we going to get? I know we wanted Matt Ryan, but Matt Ryan, I think he wasn't trying to come here. I know Russell Wilson wasn't trying to come here. So it's like, who was the best we're going to get? I would have chose Carson Wentz over Jimmy G, as we clearly see Jimmy G's, I don't know, maybe Baker, but I don't think at the time we knew Baker was available. But it's at this point I have to stop. I have to reprogram my mind in saying this is who Carson Wentz is. The Carson Wentz before the injury is exactly who that is. Carson Wentz before the injury. We're not getting that Carson Wentz. They didn't get him in Philly. They didn't get him in the Colts. They had a good season with the Colts, but there's going to be times where Washington is going to need to win because of Carson Wentz. And I don't think he's at that spot yet, or not even yet. I don't think he's at that position. I don't think he mentally, physically, emotionally, I don't think he's there. And I don't think he will get back there because, again, the Colts gave him every single thing that he needed to succeed. Hell, he even got him the coach when he was with the Eagles, and it didn't work. So, I mean, you know, there
are Hail Marys, but
unless Aaron Rodgers is throwing them, it's not that successful. So, yeah, we'll talk about you. We'll talk about a little later with the question that you have with our record and everything, but you're asking me a lot of a person that hasn't really produced what his value should produce, and it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough.
There was a time when the world of sports was debating whether Carson Wentz was better than Dak Prescott. We're long from that. I think given what we saw last season, I think we're long from the debate of whether or not Carson Wentz is better than Jalen Hurts. Carson Wentz is the third best quarterback in this division, for what it's worth. I mean, the Giants don't matter, so I guess he's the worst quarterback in the division if you look at it that way. Carson Wentz obviously won't be MVP caliber Carson Wentz. He won't be 80% of that. I don't think he'll be 30% of that. I do, however, think though that because there's just absolutely no expectations for this football team this season, if the Carson Wentz we saw in Indianapolis last year, I think he was 17. He was like 27-7 or something like that last season. His touchdown interception ratio. I'm not 100% sure. That's a guess off the top of my head. I don't care about Carson Wentz enough to figure it out. But if we get his production from last season, or if you guys get Carson Wentz's Indianapolis production in Washington, I think you'll be okay. You've got, you're right, we'll talk about it towards the end of the show. You've got 10 games against the two worst divisions in football. You've got the 6 games against the Giants and the Eagles and the Cowboys, and you have those 4 games with the AFC South. I think Carson will be okay. To your point, I know that Terry McLaurin is better than any of the receivers that he's had since that Super Bowl run. Especially, he's better than any receiver that he had last season. So that should be of some help. I think Carson Wentz will be okay. He won't be great. He won't be spectacular. He won't be making the plays that he was making a couple of years ago. But I think Carson Wentz will be okay. Antonio Gibson is no Jonathan Taylor, obviously, but Antonio Gibson was, I believe, the 6th ranked running back in the league last season, as far as offensive production, all that stuff combined. So, like, the backfield's okay. He'll be fine. He won't be great, but he'll be fine.
Yeah, but he's gonna have that one play a game that you're just gonna say
WTF,
bro.
Yeah, what are you doing?
Well, that's a given. That's a given. But he'll be okay. I think he'll be fine. I think you can get 20-12 out of Carson Wentz.
20 what?
20 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. I think that's reasonable.
Is he gonna play enough? The man tried to go heads up against Aaron Donald. Think about that. He tried to go heads up against Aaron Donald. And you think we're gonna get 20? All right.
This is what I think. I don't think we're gonna see Sam Howell start a game this season. Unless like the season's just completely washed and then they just do what they did in Philly 2 years ago. They just pull him.
If he starts the game, something's drastically wrong.
Yeah, if Carson Wentz stays healthy, he'll start all 17. And I think that'll be enough to give you 20-12. That is I think the best you'll get from Carson Wentz is 20-12. I think if Carson Wentz finishes the season with 20-12 and like somewhere around 3,500 yards, I think you're looking at a successful season from Carson Wentz in my estimation, because he's not going to be the days of 4,000 yards and close to 40 touchdowns are over. Like that, we're not getting that anymore. 20-12, somewhere around. He'll get at least 3,000 yards passing this season. I'll be shocked if he doesn't.
If you're deeming that a success, that's only because the expectations are so low at this point.
Yes, they haven't been lower, which is why if he fails, then I don't know what you're going to do. Well, you'll be drafting a quarterback next year anyway, I would presume, just because of the talent at the quarterback.
Well, no, there's no point. Again, and it goes back to your first question, man, with the whole Dan Snyder. What's the point of drafting a quarterback next year when you draft a quarterback this year? You're going to ask
a revolving circle.
I don't draft a quarterback this year.
No. It's all right. It's just look. The reason why there's optimism for Washington is because he should be better than Alex Smith was. Now we're talking about Alex Smith that had half his arm meat was now on his leg because it got damn near amputated. Yeah. But that's what we're hoping for. And it's Carson Wentz, man. Carson Wentz had arguably the best offensive line in the league and still went heads up with Aaron Donald after throwing an interception, by the way. Let me not I don't know if y'all remember how many times he threw them flick interceptions. That's
Yes. Yes.
that. It just that's just who we're dealing with at this point.
So last season in Indianapolis, Carson Wentz threw for 3,500 yards. He had 27 touchdowns, 7 picks. He had a 94.6 passer rating. Yeah,
that is all a facade. It's all a facade, bro.
No, it is. It is
behind the best, arguably the best offensive line.
And you watch the tape, it should be so worse than those numbers.
I think though, because it's not that big of a gap, but I really do think that I think Terry McLaurin is better than any wide receiver. I know that Terry McLaurin is better than all the wide receivers in Indianapolis.
I think Michael Pittman might be a more complete receiver than McLaurin is right now.
Hold on now. I do not agree.
He's more complete, but I would take Terry McLaurin over Michael Pittman.
You want to know the epitome, like the crescendo, you want to know the best game. I looked it up before we did this. Mm-hmm. I looked up Carson Wentz's best game. Like what was his defining game last year? And I think it would be against the Ravens. At Baltimore, they were up like 23.
They were up big. Yeah, that was a
3. And how did that game end? The man had a wide open Michael Pittman going across the lane, and he overthrew him. Which ultimately, Lamar Jackson, I was at that game actually. Lamar Jackson won that game. And I'm thinking to myself, this might be, they both threw for like 400 yards. I'm like, if this is the best Carson Wentz can do, Washington's in trouble. Because the biggest play of the game, they needed Carson Wentz. He threw quarters 1 through 4.5 was brilliant. Mm-hmm. That last half, 10, 15, that last 10 minutes, I don't know how many overthrows, I don't know how many underthrows, how many balls should have been intercepted. It's just the best Carson Wentz game, to put a bow on it from my standpoint, the best Carson Wentz game last year came in a loss. And it was because they needed him to make a play, and he didn't. All they need to do is get to there was a lot of people saying that they're good enough to win at least go deep in the playoffs last year. And you couldn't beat the Jacksonville Jaguars. The same Jaguars that people forget. The whole Urban Meyer situation happened last year.
Yeah.
And you couldn't even win. Yeah. So
Carson will have a shot to redeem himself because he's got a date with the Jacksonville Jaguars to kick off the season. Let's move on from Carson Wentz because I'm sure you don't enjoy talking about Carson Wentz. We're not going to enjoy anything, but it's fine. Let's talk about Jahan Dotson, who was picked 16th overall in the draft this year. I feel like that's the only, my estimation anyway, is that was probably their only good pick. It's the only pick that made sense for Washington this season of the 3 picks I think that they had. Will Dotson be a reliable number 2 alongside Terry McLaurin this season?
I think so. Washington elected not to trade down to get one of the Chris Olaves or one of those players. So I think they got the best receiver that they could. I do think he possibly. I think I agree with Blaine. I think you said he probably has the best hands in the draft. And he's going to need it for all the inaccuracy. Never mind. So I do think he can be good. I think one of the best things going for him is he's playing alongside Terry McLaurin. Now we'll see with the whole contract situation, but he's playing alongside Terry McLaurin, and all we've heard out of the camp is he's one of the most underrated receivers in the league. He's one of the best leaders. I mean, he was a captain his rookie year, and that's because he was just that good. I think it was a good pickup for Washington. We'll talk about some other draft decisions, but I do think that was a good pickup for him, and I do think he can flourish as a second option. I mean, he was a number 1 option in college, and of course, as we know, college is different from the NFL. But you're playing alongside, in my opinion, one of the best wide receivers in the game, in Terry McLaurin, and so I think it's definitely gonna. And one thing that can be said is the way that he was used in college kind of is the same scheme that they're going to use in Washington. So I do think that bodes well for him as well. So, you know.
Yeah, I agree. I loved the pick. I thought it was almost a no-brainer at that point, at that stage. You could have made the argument for Treylon Burks from Arkansas just to get somebody with some real size for the red zone, because Dotson's probably he's more at the 6'1", 6'2", and then the 6'4", or 6'5", where Burks was. But I feel like he's more of a complement to what McLaurin and Samuel are, because those guys are two burners, and he's more of a possession wide receiver. He'll play the middle, and he's got the best. Again, I think he had the best ball skills in this draft, and that's what we really need. We need somebody that's got a great catch radius. So I think that's going to be huge for us, and it's going to help. I think it's going to actually make McLaurin even have a better year than people expect, and everyone thinks he's going to have another great year anyway, just because of having someone that complements. Because I feel like with wide receivers, if you have too many burners on the field, it just sometimes actually counteracts what you're trying to do offensively. So I think Dotson being more of a possession wide receiver is going to be a huge component to not just McLaurin, but also maybe if Samuel can stay healthy as well. So I think that's going to be it'll be a lot of ifs, but I think Dotson was the smartest pick that we made all draft.
Yes.
I think if Curtis Samuel stays healthy this season, he was dealing with injury last year. I think if you look at what Dotson could be, we already know how good McLaurin is. We know what Samuel can be when he's fully healthy. I think the three of them together as a complete unit, 1, 2, 3, has the potential to be the best 1, 2, 3 at the wide receiver position in the division. Like, I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't even know who the New York Giants receivers are. They're not good. I know that. They paid all that money on wide receiver last year, and I don't think any of them scored a touchdown. You look at the Eagles, obviously they have A.J. Brown and they got Devontae Smith, but who is that? They don't really have a clear number 3. And with Dallas, you have CeeDee Lamb, obviously, and you've got Michael Gallup, but they also lost Cedric Wilson and Amari Cooper during the offseason, so they also don't really have a guy that can be a legit number 3. Again, a lot of it's going to have to do with how consistent or lack of consistency of Carson Wentz's play. But I do think, though, that this has the potential to be the best 1, 2, 3 at the wide receiver position in the division. This is the only good pick that Washington made. The other 2 picks, I think, are rather confusing. This is the only one that was kind of like a no-brainer and made sense. There was a lot of movement, especially in the middle of the draft, with guys trading up and down and trying to shift around to see where the receivers are going to be. I had originally thought, and I was on a show, that if he was available at 16, they would have went with Kyle Hamilton. I was actually a little bit surprised they didn't maybe trade up to get Kyle Hamilton. But again, he went to Baltimore, and so this was, I guess, the next best thing. Staying on offense, they drafted a running back in the 3rd round whose name I can't think of right now.
Robinson?
Yes. Were you surprised that Washington went running back? Not just in the 3rd round, but like in general. Were you surprised that they went running back in the draft?
Yeah. I was surprised because of their needs. And I feel outside of a solid number 2 wide receiver, we sit here today and I feel like the needs that they had during the draft that they could have addressed was not, they still have the needs. Like, we still need a solid safety. We still need, our offensive line still has a lot of holes in it, which is one reason why Antonio Gibson kind of fell off towards the end of the season. And as we know, Carson Wentz needs a good a good offensive line. So I just don't understand why. And the offensive line, like the picks, the talent at the offensive line position in the draft this year was some of the best that we've seen in years. And the fact that we go wide receiver, defensive tackle, running back, safety, quarterback, tight end, offensive guard and a cornerback. Makes no sense to me. It it doesn't really make sense. I think he's a really good running. Brian Robinson's a really good running back out of Alabama, but again, it kind of feels like, to a very, very, very less extent, um, when the Cowboys picked CeeDee Lamb, they didn't need CeeDee Lamb, but they got him. Now I don't think Robinson's going to turn to CeeDee Lamb. Don't get me wrong. But we have glaring needs. That, by the way, we didn't really even address in the free agency. So I just don't. I would understand if you address in the free agency, like, all right, we get, some good offensive linemen, and then it's like, okay, that makes sense. You have a bruising running back in Robinson, as well as more of a shifty running back in Antonio Gibson, but we didn't even do that. So that draft pick, or the draft outside of the number one pick, and our free agency is just more of head scratching of why you go with the quarterback that you need help with, like that needs a lot of help, and you don't give him said help. You don't help him in the most in the most glaring needs that we have. I mean, hell, that's one of the biggest reasons why Alex Smith didn't work. Like, I don't like our draft. Our draft was terrible in my opinion. So
Yeah, it makes my head hurt when sometimes especially when we talk the Commanders, just because we always make the decision that we shouldn't make every time. Other than Dotson, we should, and I agree with Marcus. I wanted us to go up and get to Kyle Hamilton as soon as he fell out of the top 10. I was like, go get a guy who's going to be a playmaker all over the field on defense, because our secondary has been in shambles always. We have a great front four in our defensive line, but the secondary has always been the issue on defense for us. And then our offensive line, especially losing Sheriff, which we almost knew was going to happen. It was a guarantee that he was not going to stay, especially after we had to trade Trent Williams and that whole situation. And then Sheriff was not happy with how everything was going with us too. So you knew he was going to walk. And then you address those needs all with a 4th round pick or later, right? Like and then you take a quarterback that, he definitely fell immensely from where people were projecting him, but why? And with Sam Howell, don't get me wrong, great arm, but he's so raw. He's going to need at least a year or two. And the issue with us is that we don't wait, because Dan Snyder doesn't want to wait. He wants to throw him into the line of fire as soon as we get him.
And is Carson Wentz the best teacher for him? Like, think about that.
Exactly. With decision making and all of that. Man, this is turning into a very sad show.
For real. Like, I'm getting upset. I'm hot now. Like,
I
thought I was gonna be the peace guy.
And we might as well just, honestly, I'm surprised that we didn't change our name to the Washington Crimson Tide. Like, let's be honest. With the amount of people that we have from Alabama on our team. Because I think that's all we do is draft Alabama in the first 3 rounds.
I think if you play for Alabama and you declare for the draft, you're almost a lock to end up in a Washington Commanders jersey.
At some point in your career.
Yeah.
I'm trying to give you guys a little bit of hope. I think there's a little bit of this pick was terrible. Don't get me wrong. This was not a good pick by any stretch of the imagination. I think, though, if you can attempt to rationalize why this pick was made, I think you have to start with Antonio Gibson's workload and his injury issues, because he was dealing with injury last season, and you couldn't really let him,
because of the offensive line.
Because of the offensive line, right? And you couldn't really let him rest and kind of get back to 100% because you didn't really have a reliable backup. I would assume that's why you draft Brian Robertson Jr. out of Alabama.
That high, though? That high?
No, he shouldn't have been drafted that high. You're right. He shouldn't have been drafted.
You could have got him in the 5th round.
You could have 100% got him in the 5th round.
He would have been there.
But that is the justification. he didn't really get to play ball really until his last season in Alabama because he had to sit behind Najee Harris and Josh Jacobs and Damian Harris.
Think about that. We have a fourth option.
Yeah, he went for almost 1,400 yards last season in his last season in Alabama. And he's a good short yardage back, which is something that Washington didn't have. Well, they don't have a lot of things, but a short yardage back is one thing that they don't have, and he's a power runner. There's a little bit of hope. He shouldn't have been drafted that high. I'm sure he would have ended up on the team eventually if he was available. I think they just jumped the gun here because to Blaine's point, I mean, you drafted Percy Butler in the 4th round. You drafted Cole Turner in the 5th round. You draft Chris Paul in the 7th round and Christian Holmes in the 7th round. Like those are the bigger needs: corners, safety. Those are the things you should have been addressing.
And those guys are just going to be special teamers. They ain't going to play.
Exactly, they're not going to play,
and they're not going to play. And oddly enough, a part of the draft report on Percy Butler is that he's good for special teams. So he'll fit right in as a gunner on the kickoff.
Awesome. Love it.
Apparently with the Washington,
because Tress Way was our only Pro Bowler for like 2 years in a row. So
that is true. The only other, I guess, notable pick is Fedarian Mathis, also out of Alabama. He's a D lineman. You've got Jonathan Allen. You have Montez Sweat already on your defensive line. How does Mathis fit with those three in the front?
He doesn't. You're starting to you're crowding the room, man.
This was an issue with Ioannidis walking because we said we weren't going to pay him.
Yeah,
and that's how they combated with it by going D tackle.
Look, I understand that you wanna have a strong defensive line. I get that, and we already have that. What I'm saying is, why continue? Look, I understand. I get the fact that you want a good line. I get it. Trust me, you need a good defensive line. But what good is it? We had on paper, we had one of the best defensive lines last year. What did we not have? A good secondary.
Yeah.
So why not? I mean, you love Alabama. Why not go on the Alabama side? It just doesn't make sense. Yes, he's a fine player, and I'm sure he'll be great. I'm sure he'll do exactly what Washington has been doing, and that's pretty good at the defensive line. But outside of that, what happened? Joe, did you see the game where Justin Herbert was just that's extreme. We had an opportunity to beat Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. What happened? We could not stop this man from throwing the ball in the second half because they kept breaking contain. It just doesn't. Yes, he's a great pick. If you have a need at the defensive line, but we do not. The one thing that Washington does pretty good, and that is have a defensive line, especially with Chase Young coming back. But that's like you going to a buffet. At some point, why are you going for your 5th plate, brother? Like, maybe you need to chill out. Maybe you need to chill out and get some water. I'm just saying, we need, like Blaine said, man, we have so many other needs that could have been addressed at the top of the draft, and we only addressed one of them. And it's crazy, in my opinion.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, I mean, we had the best defensive line, and Chase Young wasn't playing half of the year.
Exactly.
So, wake up, people. We're going to have the Rookie of the Year and arguably one of the best pass rushers in football back, and yet we still go defensive line. When we needed really the other end of the trenches, not the defensive end. We needed the offensive side. But, that's just how we roll. We'll make one good pick, and then we will completely botch every other pick. It's how it happens with us for every draft. We have one pick that makes sense, and then we have 6 that doesn't. That's all I can say about it.
On this pick, because up until 3 hours before the show, I didn't know that they got drafted. So that's whatever. Let's talk about the schedule. As I've mentioned, you've got 10 games against 2 worst divisions in football, but there's also some other interesting matchups. You've got a game against the 49ers. You got a game against the Falcons. There's a game in here against the Bears, who on Monday when the show dropped Jalen and I both talked about how terrible the Bears would be this season. You've got a game against the Lions and the Jaguars to start the season. Like, you would think that this is a rather favorable schedule, even though this is a team that doesn't have everything figured out. How many wins are the Commanders going to finish the 2022-23 season with?
17-0
last year. Carson Wentz is going to be an MVP. McLaurin's going to have 2,000 yards. Chase Young is going to have 26 sacks.
Shoot for the stars.
Yeah,
all times on his team, huh? Like, Jesus.
Yeah, no, we're going to be the greatest team in NFL history this year. You know, what was our record last year? What was it? Was it 6 or 7 wins?
7-9. It was the same record as the year before when you guys made the playoffs.
Damn, I'd be happy if we get back to 7.
I think you will.
I did.
I think
if we get back to 7, I won't be happy, but I'll be like content.
I think you can get 8 or 9.
That's how low expectations I have this year. And the only expectations that I reasonably have is because nobody wins the division consecutively.
Sure. I think you can get 8 or 9 wins out of this schedule. I'm being like 100% serious. I think this is a favorable schedule. Obviously, the one issue that you have is when you look at some of these games, it will come down to, as you talked about earlier, like Carson Wentz's play. Because you look at a team like the Jaguars, who aren't a good team, who have just as many holes, if not more holes in Washington, you're like, okay, well then whatever quarterback plays better will likely win that game. Same thing for the game against the Lions. You can make the argument for both games with the Eagles, even though the Eagles are the better team. You can say the same thing about the game against the Bears. You've got the Texans, the Falcons, 2 games against the Giants. Like, there are a lot of, and then of course there's the game against the Browns. And as talented as the Browns are, they don't know who their quarterback is. And I'd bet every dollar I got it won't be Deshaun Watson. I think that'd still be a tough game to win, but without Deshaun Watson, who knows what the Browns will look like, especially come week 17. There's hope. I think if we're being realistic, I think you matched the win total last year of 7. I think on the high side you push 9, maybe 10. There's just a lot of winnable games on the schedule, and it really will just all come down to
the first 2 weeks will be a great indicator. If we can't beat Jacksonville and Detroit, we're gonna be awful.
Yeah, or if we're in close games. And I'm gonna say this, I'm gonna be dead serious. I think we're gonna win the division. I think we're going to the playoffs because we're winning the division. I will say this: the division is up for grabs right now. I think right now, a lot of people are making a lot of Phillies offseason, rightfully so. They had a good offseason, but is Jalen Hurts really that guy? You know what I'm saying? Like, Jalen Hurts he made some leaps last year, but is that because of who he played? I mean, Dallas, you lose Amari Cooper, and as we've seen, Dak Prescott's best seasons have been alongside Amari Cooper. You lose Cedric Wilson. They lose Randy Gregory. And the jury's still out on Daniel Jones. So that shows that the division's up for grabs, in my opinion. I will push back on, I do think New York has the best wide receiver core by name, but look who they have throwing them the ball. You know what I mean? Like, at that point, like, ugh. So I think I'm holding hope that we get the best Carson that we can get. I have lost all faith in the fact that we're going to get pre-injury. I've lost all faith after what I saw last year from the Colts. I think that we're going to get the best Carson Wentz that we can. I'm hoping that we can get the best Carson Wentz that we can. And in my opinion, if we get the best Carson Wentz that we can and play to the best of our ability, which is clearly easier said than done if you're in Washington, I do think we can get to maybe at the high side 8 or 9 wins. And in my opinion, 8 or 9 wins, depending on what happens with Dallas, can win you that division. Sure. Now, once we run into like a good team in the play, I mean, I'm looking at the schedule. Like you said, we have some easy. I want to know what we look like week against the Packers. I'm not saying we're going to win that. Trust and believe. I'm not saying we're going to win that. But if we look like a drastic, like if we look like we shouldn't even be on the field, then we have some major problems. Like I don't think we're going to win. No, I do not. But if we look like when what was it? We look like 50 against Dallas last year.
Yes.
And I was like, that's when they were fighting Jonathan Allen and so
yes.
I want to see what we look like against some of the best teams that we play, and the best team right now is the Green Bay Packers. But as far as I think if we don't flourish in this schedule at this point, we're tied from the second easiest schedule in the league.
No, I think you're tied for the easiest schedule.
I'm sorry, the easiest schedule in the league. So if we can't get 8 or 9 wins, then I mean, I would say blow it up, but it kind of seems like we've been blowing it up every 3-4 years. So we just blow it up and put wrong pieces in.
Just looking at the schedule, if we're being completely honest, you've got the Packers, you've got the Vikings.
I think Tennessee too, right?
You got the Vikings, you got Tennessee. Like the only, if I'm just being completely honest, like the only 3 teams that I look at and I say these are good teams that are going to the playoffs without even playing a snap of football. It's the Colts, the Packers, and the Vikings. That's a 3-week stretch, 7, 8, 9. Like those are that'll probably be the worst 3-week stretch of the season for this team. Like outside of that, like I said, if Deshaun Watson's playing, obviously the Browns are going to be a fantastic team. Even without him, they still have one of the better defense in the league. But if you don't like whoever's the quarterback, I think makes a difference in Cleveland. That could be a game to watch towards the back half of the season. You've got the Titans. Yeah, they've got Derrick Henry, and he's Derrick Henry. He's the best back in football. But
we got that defensive line, though.
You don't really have a wide receiver core. You've got Treylon Burks and because Julio's not likely. Julio's not there, and AJ Brown's not there. So like you don't really have a wide receiver core. The defense is not anything to turn your nose up at. Like the offense has taken drastic steps back from where they were the last time we saw them. So like, and the Cowboys, as you mentioned, the Cowboys are the Cowboys. You've got Dak Prescott, who's a solid quarterback, but like you said, Dak hasn't played good football without Amari Cooper, and Ezekiel Elliott hasn't been pre-payday Ezekiel Elliott. So the run game's kind of shot, and the defense has lost pieces. Every team, I think, every good team last season that's on this schedule has come down to earth. Even you look at a team like the 49ers. Like, we don't exactly know who's going to be the quarterback there. And whether it's Trey Lance or Jimmy G, you can never be too safe with 49ers because Trey Lance has no experience really, and Jimmy G is always going to find a way to kind of ruin it at the end somehow, like we saw in the NFC Championship last season. So, like I said, I think it's realistic to say that Washington can find 8 wins, especially when you have 10 games against the 2 worst division football. While I do have the Eagles winning the division, it wouldn't be crazy if I wouldn't be surprised if the Giants win the division. Like it's the NFC East. Like
let's not disrespect us
here. I don't think the Giants are going to win the division, and the Giants have a lot of things to fix. But
the Giants will be happy if he makes it 5 games this year.
Yeah, come on now, the Giants, brother. Daniel Jones and the Giants.
Well, Joe Shine is very high on Daniel Jones.
Who?
Joe Shine, their new GM. He loves.
Yeah,
him.
Of course, because he's their new GM.
Well, he also he said he sees glimpses of Josh Allen in Daniel Jones.
Yeah, like the first few years. Like
Are you sure what he's seeing?
Yeah, he's talking about.
I don't know what tape you watching.
Rookie year, Josh Allen, the one when he threw like 40 interceptions. I get that. I get it.
I'm just the messenger. I think there's a lot. The team's not that great. It's not the sexiest team. There are a lot of things to fix, specifically offensively. I think when you've got the easiest schedule in football, you got to figure out a way to win games. If you can't win games with the easiest schedule in football, then you've got massive issues. I think they have, if you don't include like both games against the Cowboys and Eagles, they're playing 4 playoff teams on this schedule. The Titans, the Packers, the Cowboys, and the Eagles are the only playoff teams on this schedule. So you got to find something. You have to find something. Thank you guys for coming on the show. I appreciate it. I definitely appreciate you guys putting yourself through this for the sake of me. I appreciate it. Jalen, we'll start with you. Can you please let everybody know where they can find you and all your content?
You can find me in the clouds. You can go to the Unpopular Podcast YouTube channel. That's where you can see all the episodes as far as the visuals. You can go to any DSPs, the Unpopular Podcast. It's the podcast with the headphones because I didn't realize when I made that title how many unpopular somethings there is. So there you go. You can go to my Instagram, the_unpopular_pod. I'm pretty well. I have help with that, so my social media manager, she's pretty good at that. But yeah, you can follow me on all DSP, or you can find it on all DSPs as well as YouTube, the Unpopular Podcast. That's me.
Good, Blaine.
Yeah, and you can catch me, Final Whistle Sports Podcast, on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, you name it, we've got it. Final.whistle on Instagram, TikTok, Final Whistle Sports Pod on Facebook. Always trying to get as much new content out as possible. I have been off for the last couple of weeks because I've been getting ready for a move. So, but I do have an episode coming out this week, so be on the lookout for that. A lot of NBA Finals talk. So.
Well, again, I appreciate you guys for coming on the show. As always, thank you guys for watching and listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, click the notification bell so you don't miss any new episodes. At the pace we're going, we'll be at 200 episodes in like 2 weeks because there's been
100 episodes.
Yeah, well, there's been like
congratulations, my guy.
That's big. That's big. Good work.
That's huge, bro.
I'm exaggerating it slightly, but like there's been an episode out every day for the last week and a half, 2 weeks. And it's not going to stop because we still got finals and obviously we still got football. So it's been a slow, painful grind. So for Jalen Hunter of the Unpopular Podcast and Blaine Spencer of the Final Whistle Sports Pod, this is Marcus of Go Talk with Marcus signing off. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, you guys enjoy the rest of your life.